Good evening, Roy.
First of all, Don, I suppose I would describe you as a paranormal investigator. Would you be happy with that label?
That's what I am, or at least what I started out initially. These days, I'm sort of delving very, very much deeper into the mechanics behind paranormal activity. So therefore, I'm doing a great deal more research. So paranormal investigator, paranormal researcher. Yeah, absolutely.
What drew you to this area in the first place?
Well, like many people, I had an experience when I was very, very young, which effectively put me on the path and brought me to here where I am today. I've always had a very inquisitive mind, and I did always want to find out what it was I actually experienced. So I started doing some research from quite a young age, to be honest with you, and that led me on to paranormal investigating all kinds of different phenomena and anomalies, which then led me on to actually helping people with their own problems.
Right. What was it that happened to you as a youngster?
One thing, I don't tend to like to go into detail stuff I can't actually prove at the time, because a lot of things is open to interpretation. But I will say that I did have, to all intents and purposes, a visitation concerning a black mass over several nights, which resulted in certain things occurring. So that's a shortened version of it, but that's where I am today. That's how I am today.
Okay, so you get drawn back into it, and what was the kind of first case that you ended up looking into?
To be honest with you, it was the one actually at home when I was very young. I mean, I was probably on the age of I wouldn't actually call it a case, but to all intents and purposes it was. I was probably about very young years, shall we say. And one evening, and this was shortly after I'd had these experiences over the previous nights, and my sisters, who were even younger than me at that time, I think they was probably about 7-year-olds, suddenly sort of jumped up, started shouting in the night, "Mummy, mummy, mummy." Now, we've seen Grandma. Now, her auntie. Their auntie. She passed a couple of months before. Her name was Jane. She was very severely handicapped. She couldn't communicate at all with the outside world. Now, my sisters actually slept in separate beds, which is quite interesting. And we're talking very, very late at night. So if something occurred, else they both woke up having had the same dream. But they was totally convinced, went right into my mother. This obviously woke me up. I'm still extremely concerned and mixed up by my experience just prior to that, obviously. And I heard the whole conversation ensue where my mother's trying to play it down. And in the end, they were so adamant that they asked us to describe her. That's fine, but the thing is, when she was actually put to rest, she had a very distinctive gown on, which I don't know if it was handmade, but it was certainly distinctive. So they'd managed to describe that. And a special ring and a very unusual design she had on one of her fingers. They described that as well. So it was quite compelling, and that just edged me on even more to find out as I got older as to what is actually occurring. Something is obviously occurring. What it is, what it means, at that time I had no idea.
Now, you have a project on the way at the moment called the Phenomena Project. Can you tell us more about that, please, Don?
Phenomena Project deals literally with things that we can substantiate scientifically. It is to do with paranormal research. It is unlike anything that's ever been broadcast, seen on TV anywhere in the world before. The amount of occurrences and evidence that we're actually accumulating is unprecedented. Now, the other thing that's very, very important about the project is it's totally void of any beliefs, either for or against, of what we may think or what we'd like to think is actually occurring. It's all about testable, repeatable evidence. Under normal circumstances, obviously in the paranormal research field, that is very, very hard to attain. It's very, very rare. But because it's kind of area that I've dealt in for many, many years, we are securing a lot of evidence with some quite startling results.
Can you tell us about some of the finding then that has, if you like, have been repeated?
I can't actually go into detail about it a great deal, obviously, because it's not been broadcast, and everyone involved with it is on a non-disclosure agreement, etc. So I can't go into great detail. All I can actually tell you is anything that we actually show has got to have had some level of decent substantiation under scientific analysis and evaluation.
Right.
That also includes experience with myself and all sorts of things that we've captured on camera, things that we've been actually be able to test. So it is totally fact-based. The idea of the project was I wanted to make a series which would appeal to everybody, believers, non-believers, skeptics, and scientists. That's no easy task, as you can imagine, Roy. So I came up with the Phenomena Project. Then I needed somebody with a very hardline reputation to join me, somebody that was open-minded, somebody that was known to tell it the way it was. So I approached Steve Mera from SEP, and initially Steve actually turned me down. He'd seen my work on YouTube, etc., and he said, Don, I'm not the person that you want because I find what you're doing quite fascinating, but I think you find it a little bit difficult to believe. I said, Steve, that's exactly what I want. I need someone to tell it as it is. So eventually Steve joined me on this project, and it's just going from strength to strength. It's been quite an incredible journey up to now.
Right. What kind of stuff did you have on YouTube that caught Steve's attention then?
Right. I often go out and make mini documentary videos. It could just be literally just me going out with a Sony Handycam to try and encounter some spiritual activity, which I do get a great deal of. And it's human voices just coming from nowhere, standing in the middle of the field at 3 o'clock in the morning. And this is not sounds that are open to interpretation. This is proper speech. There's voices coming through. If I say voices coming through a walkie-talkie, then you think, well, that's to be expected. It's a walkie-talkie. But the interesting thing is when it actually activates in the video, when you can actually hear it nice, loud and clear, at the time, I didn't hear anything. And obviously then we have to look at what's actually being said on the walkie-talkie to eliminate everything else. There's figures caught on camera, and these are actual figures. There's one instance where I'm in a cellar, and there's a vase with some flowers in it, and I asked for assistance if any spirit personalities could actually turn the flowers without any physical contact from anybody in the room. They instantly begin to turn. After that, I asked who it was, and a clear female voice can be heard saying, it's Tiffany. Now, things like that, Roy, I'm sure you can appreciate, are pretty hard to swallow, especially on YouTube, because there's all sorts of things on YouTube. So I can see why Steve struggled with what he was actually seeing, but now he's actually joined me on the project, and we've been out a few times now, and these kind of things are occurring in his presence. In effect, I'm there to try and help him debunk me. That's the irony of this whole thing. So it's been quite an eye-opener for Steve as well.
Have you mentioned voices, and it's funny really that you just spoke about recording a conversation that you didn't hear at the time, and when you played it back, it was there, because I something like that has happened to me, so I can relate to it immediately. But when you talk about voices, in addition to recording this kind of phenomena, have you managed to have any two-way conversation?
And that's what I'm actually known for. A lot of my work is two-way conversations, and this is the thing that Steve just couldn't rationalise. When he initially came out with me, he thought, it'll only be an hour or two.
This is documented. You have documented evidence to show that you had
We've
two-way.
documented visual, audio, and independently witnessed evidence. And like I say, this is clear speech. These are proper spoken words, intelligent replies. This is not a kind of a that is open to interpretation. One of the experiments that Steve devised, I agreed that I would put under test conditions at any time and without any notice, and I agreed without any restriction for Steve to put in place. One of them was on a location, actually, we were filming one of the episodes, and I said, Don, I've got this little experiment for you. This involved 3 envelopes marked A, B, and C. Each one of these envelopes had a separate picture inside it, which could have been one of millions of pictures. They was all double wrapped, so you couldn't see through the envelopes. And he asked me to identify not just a picture in an envelope, but an exact, not close, but it had to be the exact picture which corresponded to the exact envelope. So at that point, I said, I'm assuming, Steve, you don't want me to guess. You want me to ask some spirit personalities what picture is in what envelope. And he said, yeah. He said, I'll be honest with you, Don, it's a double-barrel test, because you've not only got to pick a picture, it's got to correspond to the exact envelope, which is marked A, B, or C. He said, and it is set up to fail. Okay. This test had been carried out probably between 80 and 100 years, originally instigated by the Rhine Institution. And as you can imagine, it's got an extremely low pass rate. I think it's probably less than 1%. But I did what Steve wanted me to do, and I asked the spirits for the information. After several minutes, I said, Steve, envelope C, it's a picture of a kite. At this time, Steve had even got mixed up. He didn't know what was in there. Now, the interesting thing was, each picture sounded alike. So you would have kite, you would have a light, so it made it even more difficult. But the results of that was on 100% on the first attempt. I mean, to be honest, Steve nearly fell out of his chair,
Right.
So this is obviously needs to be repeated. Next time we're going to do it with 5 envelopes or even 10 envelopes. So it's things like this which people really need to follow because obviously the implications are quite incredible.
Do you have an opinion on folk that claim to be able to have direct communication? Now, you just mentioned that you've recorded stuff and what have you, but what about, and there's many of them, mediums, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I do. People often assume, because I deal in direct spirit communication, they say, Donna, I've been called a medium, I've been called a psychic, I've been called all sorts. And the simple point of fact, the simple matter of the fact, Roy, is the fact I don't label myself as anything. Yes, I claim to communicate in real time and on the spot in front of witnesses with unseen intelligences, shall we say. But yes, I'm now put under the spotlight to bring some proof to that, which is absolutely fine. I haven't got a problem with that. What I have a problem with the medium side of things, how do you put a label on something when you know nothing about it, and nobody does? You don't know the science behind it or how it works, or even in most cases, if it's working at all.
Right.
There's so many people making so many claims, and this is the problem. I've been to cases. One I've just done recently, I won't mention the other group or whatever is involved, obviously. They went out, they says, we've cleared the house for this very young mother and her child because she was petrified. She was told by the medium this woman hung themselves there. There was a man there connected to a mirror and all sorts. And in their mind, they dealt with the case. Well, this is when the mother approached me to go down and take a look because her daughter was that terrified. She wouldn't even move back into the house. So people need to realise that there's a distinct difference between anything that's evidential, factual, or simply just what they think. Because when you're actually telling people things like this, they're already in that state of mind. It has a very, very big effect on their lives.
Yeah.
So, and I really think this kind of thing, people really do need to realise, even with all the best will in the world, whether they believe it or not, just because you believe something, it does not necessarily make it the case.
Right.
But you've got to think of the effect it has on the actual client.
Mm. You said that the purpose of the exercise, your exercise, is to find out the mechanics behind why these things happen. Do you have
the difficult part.
Sorry?
That's the difficult part.
So what have you established, without going into too much detail, because obviously we don't want to compromise your show that you're making, but what can you tell us that you've found so far that might go some way to explaining some of the phenomena that many, many people report?
Well, phenomena is obviously all generally based around some kind of energy. Okay, if we take belief systems out of the way, people's imagination or willingness to believe, and just look at what's left, it all centres around energy. There's an experiment I'm doing with Steve concerning myself and psychokinesis. Now, on the experiment we did probably a month or two ago, it wasn't a case of the item, the equipment moved slightly. I mean, this was pretty crazy to actually watch and observe. There's obviously something going on there which is unexplainable by today's science. We did the same experiment. We conducted it, 4 nights ago. Initially there was a lot of movement, but that was just one large movement, and then bang, it just switched off totally. So this is, rather than just look at it and say, no, it didn't work, let's try it another night. I'm not interested in that. We know that I can do this. We don't know exactly what's involved yet, but we know that whatever it is, there is an effect there which can actually cancel it out. One of the things that we did notice and that we have been making note of is the actual environmental conditions at the time. And the successful evening, it was a very clear night, and we made note of the environmentals. The other evening, it was a totally opposite night. It was terrible weather, it was thick low cloud and everything.
Oh, right.
So at the moment, we're trying to work out why it works sometimes, it doesn't work other times.
And you think there might be a connection between the elements?
Oh, well, I know there certainly is a connection between the elements, yeah.
Right.
But the thing is, for me to say that, it's no different to somebody making a claim. It's just talk. To try and prove the mechanics behind it, that is the very difficult part, and this is where the real research comes in. A lot of time spent so that eventually you can actually find a pattern that you can actually show that people will identify with.
I think it's quite reassuring, Don, to hear you say one thing and then kind of give a rational explanation for it, whereas a lot of people will just give the format, if you like.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about anything that's happened to you that, you don't have to, I'm not asking you to kind of quantify it or anything, just tell us in your own words, something that happened to you that if you could demonstrate it, you could show people what went on, people would be, wow, and really blown away from it. Tell us a particular experience, if you would, Don.
In what respect, Roy?
As I said, something that's happened to you without you thinking, well, I don't want to tell you that because I can't prove it, but tell us something as you saw it.
Well, do you mean something I've seen?
Yeah.
Is that sort of thing? Okay. As I previously mentioned, occasionally I just go out anywhere with a recorder because I've always said to people, and again, this is a claim, but it's one that I will substantiate, that there's no such thing as a haunted house.
Right.
If these spirit or for want of a better description, or unseen agents do indeed exist, they're going to be everywhere. They are everywhere, which is why I'm quite keen to go in a totally middle of a field or somewhere not deemed haunted and get exactly the same results as I can in a house, shall we say. The reason they're more apparent in a house, obviously, because it's a lot smaller environment, So anyway, getting back to what the question, I was in an arboretum. I had no idea at the time. As I walked up the hill, I came across this little footpath which led me to a cemetery. And again, this is a claim at this time, but I can feel spirits around. I can feel their energy. And I said, I've got the camera, and I just put it on the tripod, and I said, I was on my own. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. If any of you guys can show me something on camera, that would be greatly appreciated. And what I actually made a point of doing is saying on the camera, so you can actually see it on the camera, I said, I'm now going to walk off and leave this camera running for 4 or 5 minutes. So when I got back, I obviously switched the camera off, moved on, got back, and it wasn't until I checked it, because I was unaware what was actually on there. And just after I walked off, there is what can only be described as figures just passing the camera. They look like ghostly figures. Now, this is not a mist of any kind. These are figures moving in a motion as like people. Now, Steve Meyers had a look at this, and he says there's no way that can be a shadow, and it's not a reflection, and, anything like that. So there is no alternative explanation for that at this time. I tried to go back, set up exactly the same conditions, the environment, even the same time at night, and try to actually create that, try to replicate that. It was absolutely impossible. So things like that, they are extremely interesting, and the general public find them extremely interesting as well.
So you don't necessarily need to go and find an old 17th century cottage,
No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't. No, there's so many misconceptions concerning the paranormal. And old wives' tales that started many, many years ago, which people now believe to be fact. If you take a tall tale or an old wives' tale or a rumour, etc., and it peddles around long enough and enough people start buying into it, then it is, over the years, it does get to a stage where people actually treat it as factual. That's not the case. I was brought up as a Christian, okay? I went to church. Now, I started to question things. And then what I've done ever since then is I've gone right back to the origins of where everything claims information has actually come from. And when you actually do that and you find out where things actually derived from originally, it's quite fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating.
So if somebody takes an interest in your work and they said, Don, tell us what you would, if we wanted to do our own research, if you like, if we wanted to establish some kind of connection with a spirit person, what would is there any kind of basic operation that you would suggest?
Well, the one thing you've got to understand is it's nothing to do with basic operations or what equipment or anything that you use. Because at the end of the day, it's not you or me or any individuals in control. It's the personalities. They will speak to who they want to. And I can tell you that they are not, to all intents and purposes, they're not big fans of people. I know that sounds quite contradictory considering we assume, or the assumption is, most of them were people once. But they have a very low threshold of trust when it actually comes with people. We went out the other night, Steve with SCP, Scientific Establishment Parapsychology, and a colleague. He was most curious, so he was actually standing next to me with his recorder as I was operating mine, and he was actually getting absolutely nothing, whereas I was actually picking up clear vocals. Steve and SCP have to be very, very careful. They've got a reputation. So if they say we're hearing clear vocals and not pareidolia, obviously they know that even their word and their works can be scrutinised by other people. So they've got to make sure that that is the case, that they can hear clearly, clear spoken replies.
Yeah. So just to catch up, so people know, pareidolia is where basically you just make, it's like looking at a cloud and seeing a face, isn't it?
Sounds, yeah, absolutely. Anyway, his colleague Chris was with me all night. I'd never met the guy before. He was standing right next to me with his recorder, didn't get a thing. So he says, Don, can we swap recorders for a second? Absolutely fine. So we did that. I got an instant vocal response, which was actually very, very clear. And then on what was my recorder, which Chris was now operating at the same time, there was absolutely nothing. So a lot of it is actually to do with the person and not the equipment.
Right. So the Phenomenon Project is well and truly underway at the moment. If people wanted to find out a little bit more about you and what you do, Don, how can they do that, or can they do that?
Yeah, sure. The website is www.phenomenonproject.tv. I will be updating it sometime over the next couple of days. There's quite a lot to go on there, but it does give an insight into what the project's about, who I am, who Steve is, what we're about, and some of the things that we've actually experienced to date.
Right. Just in conclusion then, and this would be a speculative point really, what if there are figures, you know, you've recorded figures that have been on video camera and things like that, and it just looks like ordinary everyday folk, albeit a little bit misty, walking around, going doing their business. Where are these people existing? What dimension? And have you often thought of what the answer is, that if these people have passed over, where are they?
I have a lot of information, which with all respect, I'm retaining and keeping to myself at the moment, because I feel that there's a certain right time to put certain information out to the public. Okay, at the moment, it's not that time. There is a few misconceptions. Like some people will say, you know, time is different in the spirit world. Well, from what I understand from them, no, it's not. It's exactly the same. So there's a lot of things that I'm going to be stating and coming out with over the coming months, which totally go against the grain to what people have believed for many, many years. There's little I can do about that. I am here to try and get to the bottom of the truth. It's no good me saying these things, so what I plan to do is take the clearest recordings from these big personalities and actually be them that's actually stating these things as opposed to me. It's also important that they don't say something, I say what they're saying. I need these recordings to be so clear that you can play it to 10 people and they'll all hear exactly at the same time what's being said. Because obviously that is quite crucial.
Indeed. Don, thanks for spending some time with us here, Beyond the Dark on City Talk. Thanks for that, Don.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.